And more on that trial. Expert testimony is taking center stage in the landmark case over whether social media platforms were designed to addict young users. For analysis, we welcome Andrew Selepak, social media professor at the University of Florida. Good to have you with us today, Andrew. This trial centers on whether social media companies deliberately designed platforms to be addictive. So from a research standpoint, has social media addiction been clinically established as a real phenomenon?
Well, this is one of those things where what we're looking at is we can find lots of correlations, not necessarily causations. And that's usually what we're looking at in the social sciences. And this is important because even in the story that we just watched, what we found is that this particular individual, who's the heart of this case, has recently been diagnosed with body dysmorphia. So what we're often seeing is that there are underlying issues that are involved here. It's not sort of a causation one-to-one. And that's where, whether it's traditional media with movies and TV shows blamed for people watching it becoming violent, or social media, people consuming it become addicted. One of the things that we're finding is that there's often other issues that contribute and lead to these problems, and that it's not a clear causation of one to the next. That doesn't mean that social media cannot be addictive. It is designed to be addictive, but at least in terms of the level of addiction that a person might have simply from using it and consuming it, that's different depending on the individual.
So how might that adjust? What's a useful way for people to understand this mental health disorder aspect of the addiction when it comes to social media?
Well, again, if we were to kind of use something that kind of give us a sort of a comparison, there are people who are addicted to gambling. Some people can go play bingo, they could go to Vegas, they could buy lotto tickets and scratcher tickets and it not sort of take over their life. There's other people who just become overly addicted, and now you have all these betting apps and everything else that make it more prominent, but even then still not as accessible as social media. But what it comes down to is, again, that your brain acts differently than my brain compared to the person next to us. And again, depending on who you are, you might be more addicted to certain activities than others. Now, this is especially true because there's sort of a reward system that we also see with gambling. That's why they're often compared, as opposed to, say, a drug addiction, which is sort of separate. But you can compare sort of an internet addiction to something like a gambling addiction, where it's really about the accessibility of the thing, whether it's gambling or social media. But at the core, there's still going to be some underlying issues that are going to be contributing factors to it. It's not, again, just a one-to-one. There's other things involved. You have social media, I have social media. It doesn't mean that we are as addicted as this particular person has reported in their court case. It's sort of individually dependent.
And yet we're hearing that testimony that up to 40% of teens may show high or increasingly addictive use patterns when it comes to social media. Does that number reflect addiction or something else? And what do you think is particularly pushing children and young people to become addicted?
Well, again, the platforms are designed to be addictive in sort of two ways. The first is just the fact that they give you this sort of constant dopamine hit of every time you get a notification. You want to check the notification. You want to see like what that was. Did someone like your comment? Did someone comment on your content? Did someone share your content? Did you get a DM? They're also a bit addictive because you can do that sort of constant scrolling and keep going. But, this is the sort of the two things that potentially make them addictive for an individual, not necessarily guaranteeing. But one of the things that we have now with young people is that they're simply spending a lot more time on these devices that are addictive. It'd be the same as if somebody was constantly had access to gambling. They're more likely to gamble and more likely to become addicted to the sort of the dopamine hit of winning, potentially money or just the rush of gambling. So it's the sort of availability and then the two parts to the design that make the social media so addictive for so many people.
Yeah.
I personally, I spend a lot of time on social media consuming content, but it comes down to, whether or not the individual can kind of set the phone aside and move away from it. for young people who, we these days are not necessarily spending as much time, face to face, real world with friends. They're not engaged in as many outside activities as, say, previous generations. It just is more accessibility to something that's addictive, which is leading to these problems that we're seeing, as opposed to maybe for older people. At the same time, let's be perfectly honest, we're kind of petri dishing all of these kids. Social media is only, if we look at Facebook, it's only 22 years old. We as a species have been around for a very long time, and it's only a brief window of this that we've had this very addictive form of technology. And we don't necessarily know long-term effects. We don't know exactly how it's impacting us. We have some good ideas, but even from a long-term perspective, 22 years over the course of us as a species is a very short amount of time.
And we've heard during this trial how this young woman, the plaintiff, got around a lot of the initial roadblocks put in place by the platform. What's your advice for parents and families looking to really help their kids navigate through this clearly addictive platform?
Well, one of the things that in the report that we just heard was that this was somebody who's creating multiple YouTube accounts, multiple Instagram accounts, encouraging family to create their own accounts to engage on her content. So, we don't want to victim blame in this, but on the outside of the actual, in this case, a young girl, now a 20-year-old, there was a lot of enabling on the part of those around her. At 6 years old, okay, you can access YouTube on different ways, but then to have family and other people, and right there in the household, extended family, creating accounts, encouraging it, sort of allowing this to continue and seeing the negative consequences of it. There is some aspect where, this would have only happened because of the fact that you have a parent who's allowing this young person to access social media on her phone, at a young age, and then enabling it through creating accounts, liking the content, and encouraging this to occur. And even if in this case, this particular person was talking about, being depressed and potentially even making comments of wanting to engage in self-harm, that sort of should be up to the parent as you're dealing with a minor to then go seek out help for this person in terms of these things that are going through, especially now, again, in your previous report, it being said that she's suffering from body dysmorphia, which is probably something that's occurred, not just recently, but been going on for quite some time. And we're not sure, based on the current story, how long that's been occurring, when it should have originally been diagnosed, and the help that this young person could have gotten long ago.
That's it. No doubt the family themselves and other families, multiple families around the world, must be reflecting at this point the best way forward. They are the initial gatekeepers here. So thank you so much for your time and your insights. Andrew Solopak, good to speak with you.
Thank you.